Hey guys, AllyZieMage here, and welcome back to another video. If you can't tell from this lovely introduction right here, we're doing a book review today. And technically, it's a 3-book review. This is not a trilogy. This will have 10 books in it. And I am not going to wait until all 10 books are out before reviewing it. Usually I try to review series like all together and kind of make it compact, or just review the first book and then read the rest of it and then review it together. But at the rate that Brandon Sanderson writes these books, that would be 18 years from now. You may be wondering if you are aware of the Stormlight Archives. You probably know that 3 days ago, Rhythm of War came out, which is the 4th book in the series. I am not reviewing that today because I do not own that yet, and I probably will review it at the end of December because that gives me time to read it after Christmas. Early January. I forgot how late in December Christmas is. So we're reviewing Stormlight Archives books 1 through 3 right now. I try to do no spoilers in my reviews, so don't worry if you haven't read these and you're planning to. You will not learn anything from this review that you shouldn't know. So the first book in the series is The Way of the Kings. This is actually, he has spent a long time writing this book. He started it before he was part of the Wheel of Time, and I'm pretty sure it came out either during or after Wheel of Time was concluded. He started thinking about this in the 90s, and it came out in at least 2010. Wow, how good am I? It came out in 2010. So yeah, it was 10 to 15 years in the works before this book came out. Yeah, it was fantastic. This is a good series, and this is a good intro to the series. Brandon Sanderson fixed a lot of the things that were kind of wrong or problematic with Wheel of Time, that it was very slow paced. There was a lot of in-between stuff that you really just had to trudge through to get to the good meaty stuff that was just oh my god, the world is imploding. That just happens right away in this book. He nailed it on that front. This takes place in the universe of the Coppermind, which is where all of Brandon Sanderson's non-Earth-centric books take place. So anything that doesn't have to rely on Earth or anything takes place in this universe called the Coppermind. So Mistborn takes place in the same world, well, universe, not world. And there's relations between all of these different series that he had. And if you are a careful enough reader and or look things up on the wiki, you will find out these patterns, which makes things even more interesting. Pretty much, there's this union of knights that existed long ago that kept the world from imploding. They would fight back the evil every so often. And then they just disappeared. All of their followers, so there was 10 people originally, and all of their followers, sometime after they disappeared, just dropped all of their magical weapons that have a spiritual connection with these spiritual beings. Trying to be as vague as possible here. No one knew why that happened. They believe that these world-ending events are done, they'd reached the end. Guess what? They didn't. They're coming back. That's the entire premise of this. By the end of book 2, you see that come back, which is not a spoiler because honestly, this is all leading up to that happening. It's clearly leading up to that happening, and you actually start learning some crucial details throughout these first 3 books about why things are happening. And honestly, it's a little terrifying reading it because you're there's 10 more books. Well, okay, there's 10 books total. So depending on what book you're on, you're oh, there's 8 more books, there's 7 more books. Why are we getting all this information now? Which makes me super excited for what's coming later in the series. He is breaking it into 2 different arcs. One arc is 5 books, the other arc is another 5 books, so we're actually coming up to the conclusion of this arc soon. It is almost done. In 3 years, it will be done, because Rhythm of War just came out. If he stays on track with that schedule, 3 years for the last book in this arc. So staying away from content as much as possible, and just focusing on writing mechanics and style. I think one of the wonderful things that keeps this series from being so heavy and hard to get through, because these are big books. This is Way of the Kings, which is the first one. This is Words of Radiance, which is the second one. And this is Oathbringer, which is the third one. They are hefty books. But what keeps it from being so hefty is the fact that he switches perspective between a couple of different characters quite frequently, and they all have very, very unique things going on and very, very unique struggles and personalities, which keeps things like pretty present. One of the themes throughout the series is that each book is primarily about one character. So you don't actually have one primary main character that's going to save the world. Like, all of these people are necessary. And if any of them die, I don't know what will happen. I mean, there's already, like, people who have died, and it's just like, that's horrifying. Why? But there's, like, a selection of characters that's, like, they're all equally important. Wheel of Time tried to do that, but it came down to, like, if Rand died, then everything was fucked. But if Matt or Perrin or Egwene or Nynaeve, if any of them died, it's like, okay, things could probably be okay. Like, it might not be fantastic, but it probably won't be the end of the world, like, quite literally. In this, they are all equally important. Like, they are all equally necessary, it seems, for things to go through. And it's shown through the fact that he doesn't choose one of them to be the main character throughout the entire series. So the first one focuses on this character named Kaladin. How he makes it really focus on that character is that you slowly get snippets into their backstory. So it starts off with a major event, and then you don't find the resolution of that event. He just time skips a bit, and then slowly the memories start coming back. Like, he knows the memories already, but it's like slowly the memories start coming back of like what happened and how it affected him. It's kind of just like him coming to terms with the situation. So that's Way of the Kings, is Kaladin. Words of Radiance, I'm pretty sure is Shalyn, which I'm not going to go too into detail about her, because if I did, that spoils a lot of stuff from book 1. And then the third one is, I forgot your name. This one's about Dalinar. The other great thing is that Dalinar's like in his mid-40s to early 50s, so this book also doesn't focus on like the young spry being the saviors of the world. It's like most of the characters are at least in their 20s, with the exception of Shalyn. I believe she's like 17. And she goes through like realistic 17-year-old problems. And it's not cringy because she's the only one going through it. It's not like everyone is. But there's also a lot of older characters like Jasna, who's like pretty important as like a mentor to Shalyn, which is not a spoiler. That's like really early in the series. She's in her 30s. And then Dalinar, like I said, he's like mid-40s, early 50s, probably closer to early 50s. It could go. Yeah, so it's not just like, the young and spry. It's not like the older ones, like in Wheel of Time, the older characters are the Aes Sedai. Or they're just like shitty farmers or military men who aren't really that important. And this, like I said, Dalinar is like one of the key characters in the third book. So it's like showing importance on all of these different characters and all these different ranges, which is amazing. And Brandon Sanderson attacks some social issues quite well and shows a lot of corruption that happens in the real world, but in a way that isn't obvious. So like if you're a racist, it's not like throwing in your face like, oh, racism is bad, because how he shows racism isn't through skin. It's through eye color. So like the light eyes or the bright eyes, which I guess would technically be me as I stare into my camera with my fucking bright blue eyes right now, would be the nobility class, and anyone with darker eyes would be considered the peasantry. And like there were different ranks in the bright eyes, and some light eye and some dark eyes could get to a high enough privilege to marry into a light eye family of like a lower class of light eyes, but they literally had different class names if you were a light eye or a dark eye. So it's like, oh, I'm a citizen of the Third Dawn would mean that you're like a dark eye. And then I can't remember what the word specifically was for bright eyes, but it's like citizen of the Third Uppity class. You mostly hear classes talked about in either the very minors of the light-eyed nobility or of the dark eyes, because to them they are suffocated by class. So they think about it all the time, because what else are they going to do? And he also handles a lot of subjects that are hard to write about and hard to write about well, like grief and the guilt that comes with that grief if you feel like you were a cause of it, even if you weren't. So all in all, I think Brandon Sanderson did a great job with the premise of, like, obviously I haven't even talked about much of the book itself. It's mostly been about how it was written, like the themes of it. At surface value, it's your typical high fantasy, world's going to die if these people don't save it. Here's some history that went behind it. It's like a cool premise. Like, he's tying things in between his worlds quite well, and if you're familiar, it's just like how all the shards broke and landed on different planets, and how that shard that's on this world is affecting it. Like, he goes into that meaty history that has, like, existed throughout all of his series in the Coppermind. On the surface, it's just kind of like, oh, these great, powerful heroes from thousands of years ago who helped bring everyone back from, like, the Stone Age to the Industrial Revolution haven't come back anymore and the world's about to die. What do we do? Oh, look, they're starting to rise again. That's pretty standard. That's not anything like new. It's just like, oh, yeah, world's dying, people get magical powers, people then save the world. It's all the things in between. Because he also does deal with, like, heavy topics like slavery as well, and how that can, like, ruin things, and it's really interesting how he deals with slavery, but I can't talk about it of what makes it interesting because that's spoilers that you don't learn until, like, book 3. So we're not going to talk about that here. And that is disregarding eye color. Like, it's not based on eye color. This is, like, based on a different species entirely, which is why it gets so, like, intense. As it gets further on, he starts hitting you with more and more of the fantasy tropes, because it starts off, like, pretty, like, mild, not too much magic, just kind of like, ah, yes, this is the world. They're sciencing their magic. Like, there is science behind the magic, which is fantastic and really cool. Like, they have these things that are called fabules that are pretty much like tiny machines, and they run off of gemstones, which in this world, I think there's a proper term for it that I'm forgetting, but pretty much these gemstones can get imbued with light energy from the high storms, which are storms that are, like, really, really atrocious. Like, if you're outside in a high storm, you're probably going to die because of just, like, how heavy the rain is, how high the winds are. They'll, like, throw boulders around and shit like that, but they also produce this energy into these gemstones, which can then be used in fabules to, like, power lights. Yeah, it's really cool, just, like, all the different pieces that went into this. If you have the time and or money to invest into 4 beefy books right now, they were each about $19. That's actually not that bad for a book this big, $20. So 2 of them were $20 and the others $25. So they are getting more expensive, probably because the series started to get more popular. But if you're a fan of Brandon Sanderson's work and you haven't read the Stormlight Archive yet, I would highly recommend it if you're the type of person who wants to wait until the entire series are out. Ask yourself if you're comfortable waiting 18 years. Because if book 4 just came out, and it takes 3 years to write each book, and there's 6 books left, and we're starting at time 0, 6 times 3 is 18. Are you prepared to wait that long to read a series that is fantastic and miss out on all the cool fandom stuff that comes before that? Like, what if a show comes out based on this, which honestly I would not be surprised about, since Wheel of Time is getting a TV series, and if that goes well, then Stormlight Archive is absolutely getting a TV series. And Brandon Sanderson's just gonna have to tell them how it ends so that they can keep up with it. Because there's no way that the TV series will not finish before he does. I highly recommend the series, even if you only read, like, 1 book a year. Make it these books. Like, 4 years, you'll get through them and you can go read whatever else. Nope, 5 years, because 3 years will mean 1 more book. Then you can read something else for another year and then read book 6 and then you're fine. Anyways, I hope you guys have yourself a magical day. Read books. They're good. The publishing industry is going under and I can't abide by that. I will shake my camera for this. And I shall see you next time. Bye.